Welcome back. We're discussing Israel's motives for its war on Gaza. Was it internal politicking or real security concerns that prompted the harsh military campaign? We're taking a look at the divisions on the issue, and my guests are Uri Avneri, a writer and peace activist who's also founder of the Gush Shalom peace movement. He's in Tel Aviv. And from Philadelphia in the US, I'm joined by Daniel Pipes, the director of the Middle East Forum and a visiting fellow at the Hoover Institution of Stanford University. As we get back to our discussion, let me ask Daniel Pipes perhaps for some kind of reflection on that question that Shakir put forward. He was describing what he saw as very difficult conditions in Gaza and saying it seems that the Gazans were left with almost no choice but then to strike out because of the lack of supplies, the lack of medication, being locked in and hemmed in under such tight control. What's your opinion on that?
My opinion is that being hemmed in was the result of terror, not the cause of it. In other words, it was the unremitting violence directed at civilians coming out of Gaza that led to the strictures on it, the fact that Gazans could no longer enter Israel to go to work and so forth. Were the Gazans collectively, and as Mr. Avneri pointed out, Hamas is the popular expression of Gazan will. Were the Gazans to change their mind and accept Israel and live quietly next door to Israel, then they would prosper. They could have trade with Israel, they could work in Israel, they could have access to the Mediterranean Sea and the like. But it's the fact that there is this unremitting hostility to Israel that culminates in violence in the case of rockets and mortar shells that leads Gaza to be isolated. So Gazans, please learn the lesson, stop this hostility, and you will see the strictures removed, and you will then be able to build economically.
But Mr. Pipes, do you feel in reality there is that prospect that Israel would let the people of Gaza have that kind of freedom that you're describing? It certainly, there's never been evidence of that kind of...
But there has been. Let me recall to you from 1994 to 2005, Gaza had prosperity. It was building. There was, for example, a significant area in the north of Gaza, right near the border with Israel, of a free trade zone. And there were thousands of workers there. And there were thousands of Gazans entering Israel. No, Gaza was prospering. The trouble is that Arafat then, and then Hamas now, would not concentrate on economic growth and social growth and cultural growth, but insisted on declaring war on the neighbor, on Israel. So no, there is plenty of history to go back to. It's just forgotten. It's 10 years ago now. But Gaza had that kind of freedom.
Let's get Rehana on the line from the United Arab Emirates. Rehana, what would you like to ask?
Hello, Mr. Riz.
Hi.
Yeah, I was just wondering that these Jews, they have suffered so much all these years, Holocaust and all that, whatever they say. But they have suffered so much. How can they inflict such misery, such suffering to another human being? What they are doing to Muslims who embraced them, who gave them shelter when they were suffering in the Europe.
Okay. Rehana, actually, if I could go to Uri Avneri here, it's of course, it's not just Muslims, there are many Christian Palestinians too, but I wonder, Uri Avneri, how Israel will come out looking after this campaign. We saw the assault on Lebanon in 2006, again, many civilian casualties. The same thing here, a third of them children killed in this latest campaign. How is Israel going to come out looking, especially when, you know, traditionally it was always seen as a victim, or at least the Jews were seen as victims?
Well, this is one of the reasons why we are against this war, why we protest against it every day. I think it will make Israel look very bad throughout the world, especially the Arab world. And because we are looking towards peace, we believe that this does huge damage to Israel. There's no way you can conduct this war without doing terrible things. The terrible things are part of the inevitable war plan when a regular army, a big regular army with immense firepower, tries to root out a guerrilla force. And therefore, I think it's disastrous for Israel. And I think that the fact that a lot of Israelis object to it should be noted, and I'm very sorry that it is not being noted all over the world. We must create an atmosphere to make peace possible. And as I said before, you need Hamas to be a part of it. You cannot ignore Hamas. You cannot make peace with half the Palestinian people and continue war on the other half. I believe the beginning of this present catastrophe was that when Hamas won the elections, the Palestinian elections, the most democratic elections in the Arab world, the Israeli government decided, with the help of the United States and of Europe, to boycott this government and to boycott Hamas. If Hamas had been a part of a national unity government, it probably would have been, by now have changed a lot.
Okay, let's see what Taylon in London has to say. Taylon, go ahead, please.
Hello. I'd just like to ask, seeing as our governments aren't doing much to put pressure on Israel, what do you think are the best ways that we can, as the general public, because there are lots of boycotts going on, especially in London. But what else would you think is the best way?
Okay, let me first, before I get to Uri Avneri on that, let me get to Daniel Pipes and ask: would Israel pay attention to world opinion in this case anyway, or is the mission stated so intense that it's irrespective of what the world opinion is?
World opinion is definitely against Israel, with two very important exceptions. In the United States, opinion is favorable to Israel in the last couple of weeks.
Right.
And in Israel, contrary to Mr. Avneri's calculations, polls are showing overwhelming support. A recent article in the New York Times suggested 90% of Israelis, it's a very fractious country, 90% of Israelis, in this case, are supporting the war effort. So in the two most important countries, there is support for the war, which makes Britain, Egypt, Malaysia, and so forth less significant once these two countries are saying, yeah, it's the right thing to do.
Uri Avneri, the fact that it's an axis of Israel and US supporting each other here, and perhaps the other nationalities around the world aren't so supportive, to what extent is that also going to hurt America? And is the support of America hurting or harming Israel in this case, in world opinion?
Well, I think most Israelis think that the only important thing is what the United States government is thinking. Because Israel is so closely allied with the United States, so much dependent on the United States, and so much influencing the political process in the United States, that for most Israelis, I don't think they really care very much what happens in the streets of London or Madrid or Paris. I'm not a partner to this attitude. I think it's very important what world public opinion thinks about Israel. I think it's not very wise to ignore the opinion of mankind. But the fact is that at this moment, what really dictates the Israeli conduct of the war and the efforts for a ceasefire is that most Israelis, especially all Israeli politicians, believe that we must stop the war before Obama comes in, that we cannot confront Obama on the first day with this, with having to deal with this war. It may make Obama very angry, and we don't want to have an angry American president. And therefore, I think this creates a deadline for this war.
Let me put this to Daniel Pipes, an email that we got in from Tad Chase here in the USA, who wrote in saying, I think Israel will find victory, quote, elusive. I believe Hamas resistance, quote, to be a fight for independence and sovereignty, and I expect it to continue until that goal is attained. My hope is that Israel's failure to defeat, again, quote, Hamas, will lead Israelis to accept a viable two-state solution as the only alternative. Now, what do you think will happen at the end of this campaign? Is there going to be anyone left around to want to talk to each other?
Well, I agree with the questioner that it doesn't appear that Israel is going to achieve a victory. I don't see where it's coming from, especially if Mr. Avneri is right and the deadline is just 6 days away. Unlikely to see defeat and victory. Right. Will there be anyone to talk to? Yeah. Hamas will be there and Israel will be there should they want to talk to each other. But neither side wants to talk to each other. Okay. Neither side. I mean, Hamas has made it clear that its goal is the elimination, the destruction of the Israeli polity. And Israel is not willing to deal with this.
Unfortunately, Mr. Pipes, I have to stop you there and thank Uri Avneri too, for both of you for being on the show. We've run out of time, but I thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
And thank you for being with us. On the next show, after a sound beating at last year's US elections, the Republican Party is looking to make a comeback. Where does this leave the neoconservative agenda of the Bush administration? As we approach the inauguration of President-elect Barack Obama, we take a look at the battle for the heart of the Republican Party. And just a quick note, you can join Rob Reynolds, Al Jazeera's senior Washington correspondent, to discuss the U.S. response to the crisis in Gaza, the legacy of outgoing President George Bush, and what the world expects from an Obama administration. That's on Thursday, 15th January at 2100 hours GMT in Live Station's chat room. From me and the team, see you next time.